This week has been a week full of a whole lot of news. A lot of things happened, from the finance minister Enoch Godongwana giving us the budget speech, to South Africa getting grey listed, and the JSE All Share Index sliding more than 2% on Friday. All this will be covered in today's episode as we discuss this week in markets. In today's episode, we will look at the budget speech, SA getting grey listed, Spur Incorporation released its unaudited group interim results for the 6 months ended 31 December, and we will wrap up with the US Federal Reserve as it is expected to continue to raise interest rates to curb inflation. On Wednesday, 2022, February 2023, the Minister of Finance delivered the budget speech. The Link platform determined the following points as key notes of the speech as delivered by the Minister. Tax incentives for installing solar were dished out to both individuals and companies. People will have to cough up more for their sins. Government takes up a portion of Eskom's debt completely off the balance sheet of the SOE, and 14 billion rands was allocated to fighting corruption. What does this mean? I have heard a couple of people saying, I've listened to the speech presented by the minister, but all I could hear were billions and trillions of rands being mentioned. How does this affect me as an ordinary South African? Well, let us break it down and try to simplify it in the easiest way possible. We might not cover every important point we have identified, but we will try by all means to break down some of the things. Starting with the tax incentive relating to solar. For private households, individuals who install rooftop solar panels from the 1st of March 2023 will be able to claim a rebate of 25% of the cost of the panels up to a maximum of 15,000 rands. This can be used to reduce their tax liability in the 2023-2024 tax year. This incentive will be available for 1 year, meaning 12 months. So to qualify, the solar panels must be purchased and installed at a private residence, and a tax certificate or a certificate of compliance rather for the installation must be issued from 1st March 2023 to 29 February 2024. What does this mean? If you had installed solar panels in previous years before these dates, you will not qualify for the rebate. Remember that this is applicable to solar PV panels and nothing more. So if you decide to install solar in your house, please ensure that you keep all supporting documentation required by the SARS. Businesses, on the other hand, will be able to reduce their taxable income by 125% of the cost of an investment in renewables. There will be no threshold on the size of the projects that qualify, and the incentive will be available for 2 years to stimulate investment in the short term. Now, what if a person conducts their business at home? This is a question that might be subject to interpretation, so keep watching and following our channel to know more. The government keeps on using sin tax as a tool to scoop more from the taxpayer. An interesting note is that even with inflation being an issue, the administration did not spare the cost of sin. The government proposed an increase in the excise duties on alcohol and tobacco of 4.9%. We do not know how this is going to turn out. Already the tobacco industry was hit hard during lockdown, and smokers bailed out to the underground markets for a smoke. Using sin tax as a tool to scoop more from the taxpayers might in the long run have a negative impact, because smokers might flee back to the places where heavy taxes are not levied. However, as 14 billion rands is allocated to fight corruption, perhaps things will turn out differently. The government took up a portion of Eskom's debt completely off its balance sheet. As a result, the government's debt will increase to more than 5 trillion rands. It's a lot. Just while we were still trying to digest the budget speech and the numbers of billions and billions of rands mentioned to South Africans, the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, could not spare us. The watchdog announced on Friday that South Africa has been grey-listed. This is for failing to adequately tackle illicit financial flows through the relevant legislation and measures to prevent possible money laundering and terror financing. South Africa and Nigeria were featured under the high risk and other monitored jurisdictions section. Jurisdictions under increased monitoring are actively working with the watchdog to address the strategic deficiencies in their regimes to counter money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing. When the watchdog places a jurisdiction under increased monitoring, it means the country has committed to resolve swiftly the identified strategic deficiencies within agreed time frames. As a result, the JSE listed bank stocks fell by over 2%. Now let's move to company news. Spur Corporation Limited released its unaudited group interim results for the 6 months ended 31 December 2022. The endless blackouts have benefited Spur as more people go out for dining. However, the power outages do increase the operating costs of the company. As the company reported on its trading performance for the 6 months ended 31 December 2022, the group's 2023 financial year started with a remarkable performance in July 2022 in absolute terms, and the group traded consistently, with another peak in sales in December 2022. Increased tourism in the Western Cape resulted in sales growth of 31% in the province. Restaurants in high-traffic national locations experienced strong growth as well. Several restaurants in casinos and resorts delivered higher than expected returns. There is something that we would like the freelance investor to understand here. The Link platform will present various information about different companies for the investor to understand what's on the market and take proper investment decisions. An investor needs to diversify their investment portfolio. I am pretty sure that most of us have heard the saying, never put your eggs in one basket, right? Meaning, we basically need to diversify our investment portfolios. Diversification is a risk management strategy that mixes a wide variety of investments within a portfolio. Now, a diversified portfolio contains a mix of different asset types and investment vehicles in an attempt at limiting exposure to any single asset or risk. The logic behind this is that a portfolio constructed of different kinds of assets will, on average, yield or result higher long-term returns and lower the risk of any individual holding. So, for instance, we have seen how other companies in previous weeks are not doing well at all because of load shedding. But since there is a crisis, there are opportunities, or rather there are companies that are doing well. Spur, for an example, is benefiting from load shedding because people go out to its restaurants and dine during power outages. There is a possibility that other companies in the tourism and leisure industry where Spur operates are also benefiting. As much as an investor would have invested in companies that are affected by load shedding, the investor must also try to cut his or her losses by investing in other companies that benefit from the country's outages. Now, that being said, let us wrap up the episode with the global markets. European and Asian shares fought for slim gains on Thursday as strong earnings in the semiconductor sector were overshadowed by news overnight that the US Federal Reserve would continue its path of raising rates to reduce inflation. Global stocks fell after the core personal consumption expenditures price index rose 0.6% in January and 4.7% from the prior year, coming above economists' expectations. Investors remain concerned about the path of the Fed's rate hikes, and the Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index report added to worries that the Fed may have to keep rates higher for longer to fight inflationary pressures. As we conclude this episode, the Link platform has taken a decision to publish This Week in Markets episodes bi-monthly so that more time can be allocated to the content we create and further provide the freelance investor with broader and in-depth information on what's on the market. This brings us to the end of episode 6 of This Week in Markets. I am Billy, and all thanks to Zoe and the team and our viewers for watching. We'll meet again in the next episode.